We talk about that all the time with the overload of products out there, but we can get back to that at another time because our next
There he
guest
is.
has joined us, Mr. Erick RedBeard, formerly known as Erick Rowan. And first of all, when I went to confirm with Erick the other day, I mentioned this in the email, but I want to mention this publicly again. Congratulations on the appearance on Revolution and the show on Friday night. So, first question being, me and Dr. Mike here were discussing, are you possibly going to sign on with AEW?
Uh, I mean, I can't really go into that, but it felt good to be back. Wrestling in front of a full crowd again. First time in almost 2 years since I've been in an arena like that. So it got me. I've been doing outside projects, and it got me thinking a lot about what I want to do, and never say never about what I plan on doing. But I like just showing up at random places. It's kind of fun.
Well, before I let Dr. Mike ask, I was in Orlando for the show on Sunday, which was awesome. I got to ask the obvious. Your eye there, is that from the match or what's going on?
I mean, professional wrestling is what it is. And so yes, some battle scars from a war in the ring with three gentlemen that can throw down some punches and kicks.
Obviously, that match was pretty hard hitting for sure. Dr. Mike, did you have something for Erick right off the bat?
Yeah, Erick, I've actually been a professional magazine photographer, all the Mark magazines around the world since I was a kid in 1966, shooting for the LaBelle promotion in Los Angeles, where I am now. And that put me through dental school. So I actually got my dental degree way before Britt Baker was even born. So I've teased her a little about that. But your appearance on the Brody John tribute was one of the most, and I mean, I've shot all over the world, multiple tours in Japan where I was living in the 90s, Mexico, Europe, Canada, all this stuff. But it was one of the most emotional things I had ever seen as content product. That whole magnificent episode, your segment, huge pop. It's nice to have surprises because we so seldom have it, with today's internet and all this bull and the dirt sheets, etc. And how did that feel? Because, everybody in the world was watching, and I think just popped magnificently when you came out. That was a tremendous moment.
Are you talking about the memorial show?
Correct. When you came out there, that was a big deal.
To me, it was saying goodbye to a close friend, and it was the height of COVID, basically, when everything was shut down, and I wasn't able to be around the people that loved him most, and that's who I needed to be around. So to be able to be involved in that and do that, it was a very special moment for me.
I always ask this, Jonathan does. I usually ask, I'm more interested in nuts and bolts. Like, who broke you in? Did you grow up as a fan? And where did you grow up watching wrestling, if you did?
So I grew up outside of Minneapolis. And,
oh, wow. Gagne territory.
Gagne territory. And I remember watching it as a little kid, and it wasn't until I was like a junior in high school, that I started watching it again. It's like 98, 99. I started really watching it. And then 2002, I decided to start training, and it was Eddie Sharkey, the trainer.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Eddie Sharkey, one of my best pals.
Yep. Eddie Sharkey, who I actually saw, earlier this year and sat and talked with him. I did like an appearance for a show in Minnesota, and, me and him talked for a while back. It was good to catch up with him. But yeah, so he broke me into the business. And fun fact, one of these indie shows I did, I used to ride, and my manager was Sheik Adnan Al-Casey.
Yeah.
Another old name. Yep.
which is hilarious because when I would shoot him in Honolulu, even before he got to Vince Sr., he was doing Native American stuff, and he's obviously from Iraq. So it's like you can pick and play any character. It's kind of insane. Like Strongbow, Jay Strongbow was an Italian guy in Florida for Eddie Graham, but Vince Sr. turned him into this amazing character, and everybody believed. Wow, that's very cool. Let me throw back to Jonathan. So Eddie Sharkey, I'll have to get on the horn and talk to Eddie about you and say, okay, how does he compare to Medusa or Sean Waltman or Road Warriors or Paul, Precious Paul Ellering, etc. All of these Sharkey guys. That's fantastic. I love hearing that.
Well, I put it out there for fan questions because that's going to be a big deal. But Eric, I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned training with Eddie Sharkey. And do you have any crazy Eddie Sharkey stories? Because I know guys like the Road Warriors and everybody else who came up under him would go, man, that Eddie Sharkey. And they would have, stories.
I got later years Eddie Sharkey. So, he's a sweetheart to me. I got nothing bad to say about him.
Wait,
I got no crazy stories about him. Yeah.
Wait, didn't you hear about him shooting up Vern's office? Was it St. The office because he thought Vern had been sleeping with this gal who was portrayed. She was a Native American female character. You must have heard that story.
I heard all the stories, but I don't buy none of it.
Oh no, that's true. Ask Eddie. That one was true.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Oh, so great. How about some Ribs and Road stories with John and Wyndham? It's so cool, for those of us, like I shot in Florida, and Wyndham and Rotundo were a tag team. But then when Mike has the son, Wyndham Rotundo is his name. So the three of you guys must have, from NXT on up to main roster, you must have had some fun times or some, whatever moments of greatness between the three of you guys in the car.
So some of the stuff in the car, it's funny. I did all the driving because I wanted to. I didn't like to be a passenger. It's just a little faux pas I have in myself. So, maybe I ribbed myself because, they took advantage of that. But to my credit, I got to listen to my music, so I was happy. They didn't like the same kind of music as me. But as far as ribs, John would rib me all the time in the ring. I had to come off that sheet mask and, I put it on, like the apron for tag matches, and then he'd constantly be throwing it off and knocking it off during the match. And, I'd constantly be going down to go get it. So he'd always pretend like he's trying to tag me. Till eventually I just decided to put it on and sit down in the corner, and then it was on him. But no, it. A lot of those nights we got so tired, just the travel, that outside of ribbing each other in the ring, like the last thing we wanted that later to be ribbed after the shows or whatnot. So for the most part, we didn't really have no ribs. I know Wyndham ribbed himself once because we were driving separately and we parked our cars outside of a hotel at the same time. I think he was trying to be funny and saw me and tried to jump out and scare me. And his car started rolling forward. So I had a great laugh at his expense on that one.
Hey, Ray, you said you had a question for Mr. Erick RedBeard. So come on up. Ray, you got to unmute, buddy. Ray, unmute. Hold on. There's people from New Mexico. Not the smartest of people. Ray,
Hi.
there you go.
There you
go. RedBeard, Erick Rowan. I needed to ask you a question. What was it like for your experience to be a part of the Wyatt family?
What was it like?
Yeah, well, your experience, like on your point of view when you joined it. Can you give me your point of view on it?
Lightning in a bottle. It was weird because there was nothing like it. There was nothing to compare itself to in wrestling at the time, and we knew that. And that's what I think we lived in the moment, made it special. And because most, nowadays everybody's compared to somebody. That's the next Stone Cold, that's the next Rock, that's the next Ultimate Warrior. The Wyatt family was the first Wyatt family. There was nothing like it. We weren't the oddities. We weren't, you know what I mean? We were different. And, we had the Fireflies and just all these different things, and this connection to the crowd, with people, singing, and Whole Wide World with Wyndham, and there was lots of just weird moments that we would look at each other back before we went out and been like, this is special, and it was.
Ray, do you have something else you'd like to ask, or?
What's it called? What made you want to go to AEW? Just by your point of view, just basically, what made you want to go to AEW? If you can explain to me, because I watch it every week, professional wrestling, but I want to see what's your point of view in AEW.
So for me, and this holds true especially this last weekend, John was unhappy towards the end of his career in WWE.
Mm-hmm.
John wanted out. He made a leap of choice, and he got out eventually. And he wanted to create. And what he created in the small little bit of time, with him winning that TNT title, with him leading that Dark Order, he made a legacy there within such a short amount of time. So that when I'm able to go, it feels like home. It feels like his home, and he feels close to me. If that makes any sense to you.
Pretty much makes sense to me.
Thank you, Ray. And
You're welcome.
It's funny, Eric, that you talked about in the beginning there when I brought up the Revolution show and being in person for that show. I flew in from Philly for it, and it was just unbelievable when you came out and the fans were so into you. And I don't know if it was because it was a 2-year gap or what it was, but definitely had a home, like you've been there forever. And can you explain that kind of reaction that you get from being in front of large crowds like that on big shows?
I mean, that crowd was an electric crowd. It reminded me of crowds that WWE used to have in 2013, 2014. Just really excited, and it's hard to describe the feeling you get, when you go out there and people are happy. You just usually expect to go out there and people to remember who you are, and then it's your job to show them, what you do. So, it's just hard to explain, man. It gives you these butterflies, and it makes you feel good.
Do you still get the butterflies?
What's that?
Do you still get the butterflies before you go out for a match?
Man, I say with everybody, if you don't get butterflies before you go out for a match or before you go out and do what you love, then you should probably stop doing it.
Dr. Mike, did you want to bring something else up there you mentioned?
Well, he had, a great time that we're all aware of in NXT, and then seeing Steve, William Regal, whatever you want to call him there now, and so many elements, some guys coming in, but particularly Regal. Can you tell us, I don't know how closely you might have worked with him and Sean and folks like that, but particularly Regal, who has this worldly knowledge. I don't know how you could let somebody like that go, who brings so much to the table. I was on a bus with him going from the San Jose venue to, I guess it was Mania, not the Hall of Fame, the talent bus. I happened to be on that set next to him, and we were talking about Mick McManus and Adrian Street and Lord Al Hayes when he was Judo Al Hayes in England, like late 60s, early 70s, my era. This guy's such a wealth of knowledge, but I don't know, do you have some personal experiences when you were in NXT with him or in any way?
So in NXT, so I think we had already been called up, but we came back for a show and we actually got to do a 6-man, tag, and William Regal was actually wrestling it's probably one of his last runs matches that he would have in that company before he took over, more of the backstage in NXT. So, to be able to share the ring with them, you're going to learn something no matter who you are, even if it's only for, a couple minutes during a match. But I would say it was very good to see him because he was always nice and friendly and offered advice. And but yeah, we always missed and passed. Like Sean was there after we had left. William had went down there after we left. So we weren't able to pick his brain as much as we would have liked. Because when we were down there, it was guys like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Norman Smiley, Terry Taylor, Tom Pritchard, Bill DeMont, but kind of went through both those stages there. Joey Mercury was there for a time too. So it was a different kind of developmental too. So and Dr. Tom, same kind of guy. How do you let a guy like that go?
Yeah, right. I couldn't. Smiley, I think, is one of the few. I'm hoping he's still there from what I heard. Nicest guy on planet Earth. I got to shoot him wrestling in Mexico against Vampiro and guys like that, and then in Japan. And man, that guy is something else. Do you have any fond remembrances of Norman? Because that guy's just aces for me.
Oh, Norman's the best. I remember doing an indie show at some casino in Wisconsin years and years before I got hired. And I think I did a match and then I managed Lenny Lane versus Norman Smiley. So, he's tremendous. And, as entertaining as he is, that man knows every hold known to man. It's crazy his knowledge within that wrestling ring and those ropes.
Another guy like that, obviously Dean Malenko. How do you let a guy like that go? But hopefully, I'm sure if he saw you, probably gave you a big hug, whatever at AEW. Let me ask something else, and then I'll throw back to Jonathan. The moment when you three in WWE were in there with Mox and Seth and Roman the very first time, and it was you were several feet apart, and the whole audience was going nuts and screaming, "This is awesome!" before anything even happened, before any words were spoken or whatever. I'm sure you've been asked this a zillion times. So was that a big, huge moment for you? It must have, obviously been the way the crowd was going out of their minds.
Oh, that was an unreal moment. It was huge. And what's cool is it all started, that whole feud started in London, I think, when we came face to face for the first time and had some physicality. And the cool part about that pay-per-view that means a lot to me is we did that Elimination Chamber match, which was Shield versus Wyatt's, but we did that in my hometown of Minneapolis. So that was, it's always going to be a match that I hold dear to me.
Well, last thing. Oh, go ahead, Jonathan. I'll ask you.
Go ahead, Mike. Mike, it's yours.
Well, if you were on any Wisconsin indies, does Carmine Desperado, does that name ring a bell? Did you ever work for him in Wisconsin or?
It rings a bell. I don't know if I can remember if I worked for him specifically, but I know he was mutual friends with a buddy of mine.
Okay. Yeah, real character. I always tease him because this guy shot as a heel manager in Jersey, Philly, that era, early 90s. And then boom, he's in Wisconsin. And we always still to this day go, are you in the witness relocation program? How did you end up there? Lifelong or East Coast guy, and then all of a sudden he's just there. So who knows?
Excuse me. What I was going to ask, and Dr. Mike was talking about picking brains and everything else like that, and you mentioned Norman and Ricky and all those guys, but you and John both being bigger guys, you don't, and before you jumped on the call here, there's not many super big guys. Well, you got Omos now, but there's not a lot of you guys. So were there certain guys you were able to pick their brain, whether it be Taker or Kane and all, even though they weren't around as much to work like a big man? And many people might not understand that, but
Well, we kind of lucked out, like, because Taker was around. I got to do many loops with Kane and Big Show, and usually I'd be working Kane a lot of singles, and I'd be working Big Show a lot of singles, and like Mark Henry, and like I was lucky because there were a lot of like the last guard of like the big giants over there, so it was cool to be able to not only share the ring with them a lot, learn, but like, I remember doing live events, night after night, and Glenn Kane would, be free just to sit and chat in the locker room about different things. So he was always really cool with me and open with me about like anything I'd want to talk about or, learn.
But was there anything that you can think of off the top? And I know it's a loaded question, but is there anything you can think of off the top of your head that he said something, any of them said something, you go, I can use that, and you've used it throughout the rest of your career?
I wouldn't say anything specific. And to me, wrestling's such a cool sport. It's a profession, in the fact that you never stop learning. And I take something, either working up there or working a match or doing an angle where you're speaking, and I learn one thing every time I'm out there, no matter who I'm in the ring with. And that's cool as hell to me. But on the flip side, it's hard to track down of one thing that I can specifically remember that they say, hey, or I pick up. So I just know he helped me out tremendously.
That is awesome. And I know only got a couple more minutes, would you, sir? Because we have a musical guest coming up and such. But if I may, and it was awesome, I will say this, folks, and it wasn't heard in the interview we did with Erick last year. But if I may, sir, you are a father, and we are doing this event for Children's Hospital of Los Angeles and such. And I never wish anything on anybody's children, and what, not but peace and love, but we're trying to support those who don't have health insurance and all that fun stuff. But I'm curious to know, as a father, was there any encounters you had with some of the charity work you may have done, whether WWE or independently or whatever, that really hit home for you as far as interacting with sick kids or anything like that?
There is one that always stuck out to me, and it really messed with me, and it had to do with a sick kid, I thought, and I say I thought because this kid looked very sick. He was malnourished, but you could tell he was a happy kid. And I remember that specifically because I think 5 months after I met with that kid, and a news station did a story on the mother who was arrested for purposely malnourishing her kid to get attention. And that kind of stuck with me as something very horrible and sad. And I found out later that my visit gathered enough attention for them to investigate her a little bit more, as far as like her visiting these different doctors and refusing treatments, and purposely withholding nutrition from the kids so the kid would get sicker. So I'm glad the kid's a lot better now, but like it kind of makes you think about just life in general, and how precious it is, and how terrible, who protects these kids, and how they need the right care. And I don't know, like that story really stuck out with me, and it really bothered me, and still bothers me, like, because I looked at this mother in the eyes, and it just broke my heart.
Yeah. Well,
I heard that story. It made the national rounds.
Yeah. But have you heard anything on how that kid's doing now?
I heard the kid was doing fine. The kid was with his father, so that's the last I had heard about it. But
I haven't heard that story, but I hope nothing but the best for that kid. But the reason I said it wasn't her doing the interview, and I want to acknowledge you as I think a good human being, because I had a brief second there to say hello to your daughter, who came in during our interview in your game room, which, by the way, folks, you won't see it in the room he's in. He's got this kick-ass Nightmare on Elm Street pinball machine. But anyway, his daughter came in, was asking, I can't remember how old she is, but she turned around to the screen and was like, such a sweetheart, hello, respectful. And it just goes to show the kind of person that Erick is trying to raise his kids as. So, we have fun talking to wrestling and the business, and I know you're trying to get into acting and everything else, but that brief 2 minutes talking to your daughter, and I know you were sitting there, but I want to acknowledge that I think it shows the kind of parenting you're trying to do.
Can I just say something? If he's teaching her about the Beatles and Groucho behind him, what a great father to bring the absolute best comic, the absolute best band. Maybe that's not why they're framed on your wall, but for an old fart like me, love that.
I mean, that's actually Abbey Road, but instead of the Beatles, it's Jason, Freddie, Leatherface, and
all the horror.
and Michael Myers. But still,
who booked that?
My wife got that. My wife got that for me.
That's awesome.
But speaking of that, let's have a little more fun here with the last couple minutes here. Would you, Erick? I know you're a big horror fan. I mentioned the Nightmare Machine. You just mentioned the Abbey Road there. Who is your favorite horror character?
Man, I'm a big fan of Leatherface, like, for the iconic horror characters. Slightly disappointed with the new film, but
I was going to ask you that.
Nonetheless, I was still entertained by the film, because after all, it's campy, 80s style horror with that extra, new age, look. So, like, that's what those movies are. They're campy and they're fun, and that's all they're supposed to be. They're supposed to make you wince, and that's what it's supposed to be. So to me, it was just a fun little ride.
Exactly. And what's funny, and I want to hook you, and I'm saying this publicly, folks, and we know him because of the show, but I definitely want to hook you up. I think you would get a kick out of it if you haven't met him yet. Mr. Kane Hodder, the most infamous Jason. I think you two, personality-wise, would get along so well. Have you ever met Kane or any of the other famous horror actors?
I haven't met him yet. I haven't really done any. I've never been to any of those horror conventions either, where I could run into them.
Oh man, and we'll talk about it off air, but I got to hook you up with him. He is such a fun dude. You would get a kick out of him. But obviously, I mentioned the acting and everything else. Is there anything you can disclose on what you got coming up?
Not yet. That's the fun thing with acting. It's just like wrestling. You can't say nothing about it until you see it.
Exactly. Dr. Mike, got anything?
I just want to ask, what was your style of music as compared with, say, John and Wyndham's style? Like, did somebody have death metal and something else, or?
See, Wyndham's like a country boy. John liked Kendrick Lamar, and
Really?
I enjoyed Amon Amarth and some Viking metal. So as you can tell, we had to compromise when it came to music, but the compromise was easily settled by me driving all the time.
No wonder you were driving.
Hey,
That's great.
well, social media wise, where can people check you out if they wish to do so, sir?
Twitter, Instagram at Erick RedBeard, and there you go.
Nice and simple. Eric, thank you so much for the time. We will be back with Miss Lucy Bullock to perform before we get into Death House, the 2017 movie, which will be fun.
Hey, Eric, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.